Welcome to Flying for Flavor. We are having Greek food today. Yay! So we're at one of our favorite Greek restaurants here in Sudbury. We're both friends with the owner, and we come here quite a bit as it is. We've had several meetings and things over here over the years. It's kind of like a good little go-to. Where
you come here, it's like coming home.
So the Apollo restaurant here in Sudbury has been open since 1970, which is insane.
Way before I was born.
That was the year I was born. Is that what you wanted to get to? That was very sneaky.
No, I was just saying.
So just before my little preamble, I am sipping on wine, yes, because I'm having a great Greek wine, but also because I have a tickle in my throat, and I'm trying to soothe it so I can get through this episode, because we have Flavor Fest coming up this weekend. Well, actually this weekend when you're watching it, so I want to make sure that I am up to speed, up to par, ready to go.
Yeah, so if you're watching this on Saturday and you're in the Sudbury area, press stop. Go out to Flavor Fest, check out flavorfest.ca to see all the things that are happening in the city, then come back and watch us later.
Yeah, because the show's always going to be there, right? You can download it in your podcast player later. But if you're in the Sudbury area, this is a great weekend. Right now I'm up to, by the time we're taping this, we're about midweek, and I still have a few stragglers coming on board. I think we're going to be probably close to 30, almost 35 events, which is crazy for one weekend.
Yeah, very exciting.
And there's some really great deals. So speaking of deals, here at the Apollo, Tula, the owner, is featuring their Greek lamb shank special. So it's going to be Greek lamb, and then she does either like linguine and rice and potatoes and veg. Again, I mean, it's lots and lots and lots for $26, which is awesome.
You never leave the Apollo hungry.
No, when you see the size of the plates that we have coming. But we're also started taping because we're going to do Saganaki, because it's a thing. Well, before we get started, so yes, the Flavor Fest is on there, the updates are on there. There's also going to be maps and stuff that you can print off. But there are so many things that are happening in the city. There's 2 Wolves games, Sudbury Wolves, which is our OHL team. That's happening this weekend as well. Heard there's a bridal show going on this weekend as well. Anyways, there's tons of stuff happening, so it's a very busy thing.
Oh, here it is.
Come closer so you can be in the video.
There's good.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good there?
Yeah. We need flamage.
Okay.
Woo! Opa! Woo!
How many times have you burnt yourself?
Couple. I still have my eyebrows.
Good for you.
You don't really need like hairs on your fingers or anything, so it's fine. Eyebrows, you can paint those on these days. Love it. It's my favorite part. We had it for the very first time with I had it before that, but when my son was probably about 2 and he was here in a high chair and they did the OPA and the fire, and if that kid could have jumped out of the high chair and run away, he was
poor
terrified.
baby.
I'm like, I totally scarred my child for life with OPA, and I didn't even, of course, it's exciting, it's fun. And he's like, yeah, it wasn't so much fun.
Make sure you put it on the bread too, ladies. It's
Excellent.
delicious.
Okay,
Thank you.
So, so we have Saganaki. If you've never had it before, we have to do a whole Greek food show. We'll have to come back here at some point and talk about Greek
Yes,
cuisine.
Greek food would be so much fun.
So, Saganaki is a cheese that you can fry, which we love. And then just before they serve it, tradition is you basically hit it with a shot of ouzo and you light it on fire. It's fantastic.
It's similar to a halloumi, is it not?
In texture, I don't
Yeah.
find it quite as salty, but it's very flavorful. Similar texture, I guess. But anyways, it's
fried cheese.
As soon as she said she
What
was
else do
having
you
one,
need
I
to
went,
know?
I want one.
It's fried
I'm going to have
cheese.
fried cheese too. Look at that. Look at that.
So good.
Hopefully I can zoom in on that. And if you're just listening to the podcast, I really feel bad. I will
You're missing out.
will miss out.
Stretchy, cheesy goodness on garlic bread that's basted in butter.
If you're listening to the podcast, I will, we just took a little video clip of the Saganaki being presented to us, so we will include that in the show notes. And of course, we're at episode 25 today, so the show notes will be stephaniepichet.ca/flavor2-25.
And you're not missing out because it's going to get really messy eating shortly as well. So be glad that we're at least saving you from that. YouTube folks get to see us like chow down and stretch our cheese.
It's fantastic. Okay. So the reason I want to talk about buffets, I think it came up in the last episode, was one of the reasons to start off with. But I know I have a love-hate thing with buffets. I remember when I think about stories about it, my grandmother, who was maybe 4'10", 4'11", my cousins will correct me, but she was this tiny little thing, they used to call her Sophia, because she's like Sophia from the Golden Girls. But she loved buffets because she wasn't a huge eater, but she loved the idea of, like a lot of seniors do, to go to a buffet, they get to have a little of this, little of this, little of this, and they get to control the portions of what they want. And especially once they get older, I'm finding nothing against seniors, but they tend to get a little fussier as they get older. So they get to, without insulting someone, kind of pick and choose what they want to put on their plate. So she would always want to go to places like King's Buffet when they first opened here. If we were at like weddings or family functions, if there was buffets, she was very thrilled. But it's one of those things that I was always there with them, and I always kind of still had this love-hate. I guess I was kind of bothered by germs and stuff, but we'll get into that after. And then also when I started my catering business many years ago, everybody wants to default to do buffets.
Yeah.
And as much as I didn't mind doing them, people didn't realize a lot of time where that for caterers it's actually more expensive to do a buffet
so
than
many
by plated,
feels.
because you have to have more of the portions, because as an offsite caterer, meaning I brought the food to another location, it's not like I just had a kitchen in my back pocket that I can go ahead and whip up more food. So I always had to increase the price to allow for those people who like to overfill their plates. So that was always kind of a strange thing for people when they used to ask me for it. They wanted a buffet, and I'd say, sure, if it's cheaper for you to get it plated, have it served, which was a little bizarre, but that was just the industry thing.
Before we get into buffets too much, because this will be a hot topic for, as again, Stephanie and I typically have very strong opinions. I think our opinions on this will be a little bit more same, but a little bit similar than they can be. But lots of strong feels. But before we get into that, I need to talk about this crisis that we found today.
Oh, yeah.
It's very real and it's very scary. According to foodandwine.com, scientists expect chocolate to go extinct by 2050.
Cynthia's already starting to tear up.
I'm already like having heart palpitations because I need chocolate. So, scientists at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration have predicted that cacao plants, which is what chocolate is grown on, are likely to go extinct by as early as 2050 due to climate change. So the good news is I'm not the only one who's panicking. The chocolate manufacturers obviously are thinking, holy cow, there goes our sustainability. So Mars, the candy maker who makes things like Snickers and the Twix bar, has teamed up with the University of California on a new method that might help save future crops. So for more details, check out foodandwine.com, but holy crap, chocolate going extinct, I can't deal with that.
No. We are going to do an entire show on chocolate at some point. I don't know if I want to do it in the summer. It might be the fall, because summertime, it's not really time you talk about chocolate, but I always laugh because I'm just, as soon as you were saying that, my thought was, oh my God, everybody, Valentine's Day would be different, right? Mother's Day will be different. Easter, oh my God, you couldn't have a chocolate Easter bunny.
PMS will be different.
Oh. See,
It's a coping mechanism in my house. It's like medicine. Yeah, you're not a big sweet fan.
I am not a big sweet eater, and chocolate's like okay. Like I don't mind a little piece here and there, but it's not a be all and end all for me.
A good, creamy, good quality milk chocolate, better than pretty much anything.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the history of buffets. So you may have heard of a word called smorgasbord before. So the Swedes were actually the inventors of what we call a buffet today, and they call it a smorgasbord. And it kind of started off where it was they would let people go and serve themselves for certain parts of the course, so that the servers only had to deal with the entrees, that kind of thing. And then it just sort of snowballed from there because they just got really good at it. So around the time of the Olympics in Stockholm in about 1912, because they needed to feed larger groups and that kind of thing, they took that idea, or they saw the Swedes doing it, and it sort of snowballed from there, where everybody wanted to eat in that kind of style of fashion where they got to choose what they wanted, and it kind of felt luxurious to be able to fill their own plates.
There's another thing too, like you mentioned, choices and selection is a big draw for buffets and portion control. But also for folks like my husband and a lot of his friends who are big men with healthy appetites. That idea of all you can eat is huge, and the fact that you can take larger portions makes it super popular as well.
Correct. I mean, so it's good for feeding a crowd, and that's one of the things I want to talk about the good. So this is the Love-Hate Buffets show. So I really wanted to make sure that we were talking about the love and the hate. As much as I could just sit there and vent forever about buffets, we're going to focus on
There are some positives.
Correct. So we're going to talk about the loves first. Okay, if you're watching this, I think I just got cheese down my shirt.
We are slopping cheese all over the table. It's actually a massacre at this point.
Which is not a bad thing. Okay. So as you mentioned, there's plenty of choices, which is great. It's really easy to feed a crowd with it. So that's one of the things for volume, to be able to put out large amounts of food and let people just help themselves. It's really easy to do it that way. It's really easy to incorporate different dietary choices. So you don't have to worry about asking, like, does this person eat this person eat that, this person is allergic to this person allergic to that. Going to buffets, there's so many options that everybody has enough to fill their plates, which is always a kind of a cool thing.
It streamlines the service process.
It does. So that's an interesting one. And then also sometimes, which sounds really strange, that if things are really presented in a really beautiful way on a buffet, people will tend to take a chance and try it. So as an example, I catered, it was wasn't the last election, I guess it was 2 mayors ago, it was their mayor's inauguration or whatever it's called. And it happened to be around Christmas time. Of course, it was around December, so there was kind of a Christmas theme, but I did a big, beautiful spread, almost like little buffet stations and stuff throughout the center of our city hall. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do is that they wanted to include things like veggies and dip. And that can get to be, and it's one thing if you're doing it for family, friends, kids, or whatever, you do veggie platters, but when everyone's all dressed up and it's a special occasion, veggie platters can be just
Boring.
veggie platters. Excuse me, I don't care if you call them crudités.
They're still veggies. Veggies and dip.
So I displayed them in a way where they were in these different kinds of clear vessels, whether they were round ones or square ones. I cut them in longer strips, so they almost looked like little, like succulent plants. You know, they were coming out of the, and I had them all staggered at different heights, and then all kind of color coordinated in a little display. And the interesting thing is that usually at the end of a catering event, when I'd have fruit, the veggies, whatever, the veggies used to be always the ones that were last. That event, the veg was the first thing I had to fill.
I find on market tables in the past when we've had like displays of appetizers and that kind of stuff as well, doing the like carrot sticks and celery sticks and like a tomato or something in one of the disposable wine glasses with dip in the bottom, then it's like the novelty of, oh, look how cute it is. And people are taking it just because it's cute.
Yep. And that's the whole thing. I mean, if it looks really pretty, you do eat with your eyes, partly. So to make things really pretty, especially if it's something that's not, that's something unusual that people may not have had before, if it looks really pleasing to the eye, it might be something they actually want to try. So there'll be one little tip section later. And then surprisingly, it is actually profitable for businesses. Not so much for my catering business, but thanks.
Okay. So the thing with buffets and making them profitable as well too, they also bank on the fact that there's someone like my husband who's going to eat them at a house and home, but when I eat off a buffet, I eat like a bird. I never eat like the $30, whatever it is, worth of food. Like we go for all-you-can-eat sushi, and it kills him to spend the $35 for me to have all-you-can-eat sushi, because I will eat 2 serves of sushi that might cost $20 normally. So there's that kind of banking as well, like you say with the seniors who are coming in and still paying their $25 instead of $35, they're still not eating $25 worth of food. So they're banking on that as well.
I think there's also, because of the staffing that I mentioned, so there's less staff that they actually need to have on hand to serve you. But they also don't need as much kitchen staff, because once the food is made and put out, it's just replenishing, and usually one person, maybe 2, depending on the size of the buffet, could do that. Because there's less chance, like when's the last time you went to a buffet and you took something onto your plate and then you actually asked them to redo it again?
Yeah,
it's very rare. Usually, because it's a buffet and all you can eat, you push that plate aside,
you
leave
accept
it on your
the crappy
plate,
quality, and then you go get something else.
Yeah, and you move on to something else. So again, because you just need less staff for that, so that makes a big difference.
Well, and it requires more staff as well to do individual plating, because you've got people cooking the food, then you got people staging the food, and you got people plating the food. Whereas with a buffet, you've just got someone cooking it and storing it. So I'm not saying that one person can do a whole buffet, but it definitely requires less people for each individual plate.
So just keep that in mind, though. Remember, I said hotels, resorts. I think we talked about buffets. I think it was the wedding episode. Oh, yes. I think it's flavor. I think I put it on there. It's episode 28 of season 1. If you want to listen to it, if you happen to be looking at planning a wedding or some kind of a larger affair, I actually go through the pros and cons with you. That's audio only for you YouTube folks. That was prior to us, before we were doing it on there.
Before she made me put pants on.
She put pants on. She put pants on today. It's not like that TV thing where she's not wearing pants on. We are in public. At my house might be different, but here she's gonna wear pants. Okay, so the other thing is that menus are kind of built around at buffets, things that are cheaper and easier to serve. So they start with the starches first. They use up leftovers when they can. If there's a really good deal on red peppers, Lord help me, they're doing a red pepper soup, right? So that's the whole idea is
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you're feeding a crowd. So to feed a crowd, they try to keep the cost down as much as possible because, again, the psychology of it is I need to get as much for my money's worth as I possibly can as a diner. So restaurants are used to that, and that's what they're expecting you to think. So they want to be able to have this massive spread to really impress you.
Oh, we were talking about the fact that a lot of times Sunday morning buffets at a hotel, you're getting the leftovers of Saturday night's banquet.
But that's on my hate list.
Oh, sorry. There you go. So we'll just change it around when you edit it.
I know, we want to talk about a left thing, because that's yes, you are getting. That's what the soup of the day at the time is, right? Okay, so this setup, so if you happen to be a caterer, restaurant owner, working in a business where you have to do a buffet, or if you are needing to feed a crowd and you want to keep your costs down, one of the key things is that how you set up the buffets. Important. I will have a little diagram that I used to use for my staff for training that I'll include in the show notes. But essentially it was little things. So like the lower cost, higher carb things, your starches. That's your potatoes, your rice. Next time you go to the buffet, anywhere you're going, keep an eye out for this because it's always in the same format. So you get the dinner rolls. They like to throw them. It's very rarely at the end.
Salads.
Anything that they can use for bulk, lower cost things. And then they keep the more expensive things at the far end of it, thinking that by the time you fill up your plate full of all of the rice and the macaroni and cheese and the roasted potatoes and everything else, and then by the time you get down to the higher priced meats, you only have so much room left, and you're putting on 2 ribs and then maybe 1 drumstick.
Cornell's Food and Brand actually did a study on that, specifically a research study around what the makeup is of buffet diners' plates, and statistically, more than 75% of the diners in the experiment took the very first item, no matter what it was. They're taking that one because like, first thing, food, here we go. And by the time, like you say, by the time you get to the end, 2/3 of the plate is already taken care of. 2/3 of the plate is all the stuff at the beginning. So they're taking that first thing no matter what. It's like, food, I'm going to take that. So but if you're putting your most expensive thing at the end, chances are they either will pass it up or they'll only take a little bit because they have no room left.
And then you tell yourself, okay, well, I'll just go up back for that later. But how many times have you done that? You filled your plate, you go to sit down, you barely finish what you have, and now you have to go back again, and then you're thinking, then you second guess yourself. So they're counting on that. There's all kinds of little tricks on that. So the other thing has to do with the size of serving spoons. There's little tricks that's nice to be a caterer thing as well, especially if I was going someplace where, the people were really budget conscious who hired me, and they were very adamant about like this food needs to feed 30 people.
And not having
and
too much extra.
And especially when they're having a self-served style buffet where we're not serving it for them, things that are super popular, things like macaroni and cheese, mashed potatoes, that kind of stuff, where people tend to take way more than it's needed, by having a smaller serving things or cutting things into portions that are already pre-assigned is less chance. Because I've probably seen some people, I don't want to get into that. I've seen some people like take the little square of something that's been pre-portioned and take chunks off of it anyways. But that's just one of the downfalls when it comes to buffets and people are serving themselves. But using different size serving spoons really makes a difference. When you have just a larger soup spoon for those mashed potatoes, nobody wants to hold up the line because they're trying
to get it off.
Their 16th one that they're putting on their plate.
Well, and I think even when you're cutting your chicken, instead of just serving individual chicken breasts, cut it into 2 or 3 pieces depending on the size of chicken breast. And that way, give them one. They can have more, but at least you're not having people take 2 chicken breasts because they feel like they need to take 2 portions.
And not everybody ever eats a whole chicken breast anyways.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. So that was always one of the things. Like even the larger things, if you cut it in smaller pieces, then people can kind of control it. I'm so tempted every time I think of one of these things that we're talking about as a good thing about buffets. I keep thinking
We have all
of
the
it.
alternatives.
I have all of the alternatives and stories to share about it, but
Honestly, the biggest thing is that you got plenty of choices. It's easy to keep everyone in a crowd happy because there's a little bit of everything for them. And your folks who like to eat more are able to take more. Like, I mean, those are really your pros.
yep. It's like, oh my goodness, it's time for the hate buffets part, and where do we start?
And I think for me, it's not hate so much because I do like a good buffet, but it's very difficult to create a good buffet. You have to deal with things.
Sorry,
like,
I hate buffets.
I know you do. You know what? And for me, it's kind of like, again, a good quality. So if you get one where the food is hot and fresh, so when you're going to a buffet, if you want to get the love part of it, go early.
Yes,
Go when they first open because all the food is still fresh at that point.
correct.
If you're going halfway through or towards especially at the end, so like the last like half hour or hour of the like buffet time period, just don't bother because this stuff's been sitting there maybe longer than is mandated by the health department.
That would be the subtle way of putting it.
Yes.
So there are some buffet places that's all they specialize in are these all-you-can-eat buffets. And I know of a person who has told me that a strategy was to go late morning and basically sit there long enough, having coffee in between for the one price, so they basically have lunch and dinner in the same day. Like, that is strategic. And I don't know, gotta learn it someplace. Somebody must have taught this person how to do it.
I just wonder, like, are your servers not figuring it out?
I don't know. Maybe they just don't care because you're there. I don't know. But anyway, supposedly it was. It tended to be a weekly occurrence for a little while.
Amazing.
I mean, that's professionals.
I got a story. We'll share our buffet stories before we get full-on hatred. So I mentioned earlier that my husband's a big man. Most of his friends are big men. They've got healthy appetites. We all used to go for a Chinese buffet because, quite frankly, it was the cheapest and easiest way to make sure all these big growing boys were filled. And they had a penchant for chicken balls.
Yes.
And then one of them had a real obsession with the Jello for whatever reason. Like he would go there and he would finish all of the Jello.
Enough as a kid.
And then they'd set out a new one. He'd be the first one up there to get more Jello. And he always talks about the time he was. They didn't ask him to leave, but they not so subtly, when he started coming towards the Jello, took the Jello off the counter and off the buffet and put it in a back fridge.
Who banned someone from Jello? Do you know how much Jello costs?
That's my thought. So my thought is, so he was like, screw this, I'm going to go and eat the crab legs instead and ate all the seafood. And I can see the point of the proprietor in that you can't like make Jello to order. So like it's got to sit for an hour or whatever in the fridge to get gelled. So if they ran out of Jello, then they have no dessert, and that would be kind of sad for the other diners. But like you say, by the same token, it's way cheaper to try and fill this kid full of Jello than it is to fill him full of chicken balls and seafood.
Yes.
So yeah, that was our story at the time.
Learn your lesson. Feed them the Jello.
Yeah, just let the big guy eat the Jello.
And if you only have Jello as dessert, that would be another problem.
Well, that's a whole other discussion. So talking about some of the things that we don't like about buffets, or some of the things that definitely bother me when it comes to buffets, from a proprietor side, is the waste.
Oh, yes.
Not just from food that you may throw out because it's not served, and once it's kind of been out for the recommended time by your health unit, that it really needs to be disposed of. So you see a lot of waste in that regard, but not just from stuff that isn't taken off the buffet. But I am a prime example of when I take things and put it on my plate and then I find out I don't like it, or because I'm a little bit pickier and the quality isn't always there, it gets kind of shoved to the side. And the amount that they must be scraping off of plates, it's a nightmare.
Staggering.
And it's kind of really indicative of our like consumer society coming in and taking all of the, no, actually I don't want this, to throw it all away. But that leads me to my second issue, which is quality. It is so difficult to keep food hot or cold at the right temperature and maintain the quality of the dish. When you're serving it on a buffet, your pasta can get mushy, your meats can get dried out unless they're doused in sauce. Like there's all of these things that happen that it just, at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, okay, that really does not taste good. Or a lot of times, because buffets, where you're thinking about resorts or hotels or places that cater to families, they're also keeping it more bland or more simple to please their guests. And if you've got a palate that's looking for more, you're losing out on that.
You don't usually. I mean, some resorts are their main buffet things are massive and extensive. I've been to many that are have all these different stations.
I've been to some
and they
fantastic ones
yeah,
too.
and they are doing some really great things. But I think out of all the resorts we've been to in the last maybe 5 years, I think there's been one that I remember that was so well done that Norm and I basically just ate at the buffet every night.
Yeah.
Because they rotated their menu options and their themes and stuff so often, and they did such a great job with the food that I think it was in Jamaica. If I remember correctly. I want to say it was in Rose Hall, Grand Palladium. Look it up there, I think. Anyways, it was so well done that we used the buffet, but rarely do we even go to buffets anymore when we're traveling, and it's partly because I can't eat that much anymore.
I never get my money's worth.
No,
We just know that we're paying extra. My that I'm not eating goes to covering the cost of whatever Mark might be eating over and above.
Mm-hmm.
Something else, buffets are really attractive to families.
Yes,
And as a mom who had two kids who were little for a while,
for a while.
for a while they're not little anymore.
Oh, babies.
But even now that they're getting older and they eat a lot, it's again having picky kids. There's more options for them. They can pick and choose, and when they're picking their own food, they're taking ownership of it and they're more apt to eat it. The flip side of it is when, someone like Stephanie comes over after my little children have dug through and gotten their grimy little fingers all over the food. Now they've contaminated it and it's gross.
And I've also seen some parents when you go to resorts and stuff, and they just let their kids run wild, and they're putting one thing into another, and they're racing around, and they're putting things on their plate they shouldn't. They're putting like ice cream with something else, and they're taking a spoon, and because I know kids on vacation is fun. That's a whole other episode. But it's one of those things that for buffets, that cross-contamination is rampant when it's those kind of things. It's very
Especially
hard to
with
control.
allergies and dietary restrictions and that kind of thing. So from mom to mom, I know you're really tired. I know you're exhausted of chasing them around. I get it. I was there. But just take the 2 minutes to take the kid through the buffet first with you, let them choose, put the stuff on the plate for them, and then take them back to the table before you get your own. It's just gonna, A, make sure no one gets sick, and B, a little bit more peaceful for you, because once your child is sitting there and actually eating the food, you can get yours without having to worry about your child running around and grazing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, eating things right off the... Okay, now speaking of kids, it's not just kids who eat just right off the buffet.
Oh no, it's like you got people sampling with their fingers as they're going through.
Correct. So it's one thing or they're picking up something and tasting it, and I don't like that. They kind of put it on their platter. I've seen other people they think because they're ripping a piece off of something.
You still touched it.
You still touched it, right? Remember, that's yours. Good for you. But it's one of those things that, yes, there are some people who have such bad etiquette and bad manners generally, and because there's maybe not used to dining in public and having
true.
other people having to share the same thing. It's not the same as doing it at home. You have to really be aware of the fact that somebody else is coming in behind you, which is kind of crazy. Another thing has to do with labeling. I was always very adamant when I was setting up a buffet to make sure that things are labeled. If I'm not going to be standing there to describe everything that is being served, you need to have some kind of signs, cards, something or other to say what it is. Nothing is worse than taking a chicken ball and finding out it's fish. Right? I mean, I love fish, and that would be a little pleasant surprise, but for some people, or people who are allergic to fish, that's a really big no-no. And especially because sometimes like a little fish nugget that's deep fried, like at a Chinese restaurant,
Looks the same.
buffet, will look the same as a chicken ball, right?
And if you're allergic to fish, it's trouble. We have the company where I have my day job, they've got a head office, and they serve lunch to their employees every day. Sadly, I work remotely, so they don't serve me lunch, but I have all kinds of other perks, like I get to work without pants with my dog on my lap. But when I do go and visit our head office, they do buffet, but they do, when we talk about the things, how to do it right, they do a lot of things right. Like they're more shallow pans, so they're turned over more quickly. They're pulling pans out and putting new pans in. But one thing they do fantastically is labeling. We have the glass kind of sneeze shields above, which are really important. Guards. And on top of on the sneeze guards, they actually literally handwrite whatever the item is. And then they also write all of the potential allergens right on, because the sneeze guard, you've got more space than just on a little 1 inch by 3 inch card. They can go, this one's got avocado, nuts, and whatever, and then that way you know when you go to see it that the allergens are listed nice and clearly.
I used to color code a lot of things. So if you're setting up a buffet and you have many items in there, if you know that you have one person that you're feeding that maybe has a gluten intolerance, as an example, to be able to label what things are gluten-free, I used to have like a little sign at the front of the buffet with a little color saying anything with this colored dot is gluten-free. So it saved me from writing in gluten-free or whatever. They just knew by the color codes. You can do the same thing for vegetarian, right? Whether it's a green dot or whatever. You can put little stickers if you want to be fun about it, but it really makes it easier for them to serve themselves again without you standing there saying, okay, is there anything in that? Is there anything in that? Is there anything in that? It just makes things a lot easier, and then they don't feel like they're bothering you, which is a really big deal.
Okay, so when it comes to speaking
the horror story.
to the quality again, these are things that gross me out when I'm a guest at a buffet. When it's not fully empty and people just dump more food into it,
Oh,
because then you don't know the quality. So go ahead and
That was exactly it. So there's this one particular buffet restaurant that I like to not go to anymore. I'm not mentioning the names. And it partly has to do with the fact of they do like a brunch type thing around breakfast time. So they always include like scrambled eggs or something. And nothing's worse than when you go for dinner that night and at the bottom of your pasta dish there's scrambled eggs.
No!
It's still sitting there. No. It's like, really, were you that busy throughout the day that you could not switch out your
And
pans
she's
or
going to
watch
tell me what restaurant this is later, because I am never going.
I
That's
never-
worse than even what I was thinking. No, you've got it.
And now you know why I do not like buffets.
When you're doing a proper buffet and you're doing a refill, take the dish out and put a new dish in. That would be, make sure that everything is the same time, same temperature, and you're not cross-contaminating something that might have already been contaminated by a guest.
Correct. If anything, if it's going to be a popular dish or you're making extras, you should be just swapping out the same dish for another one
Of the same dish.
of the same dish, and makes it so much easier. That's how it's supposed to be done.
So, remember, I think it was 2 or maybe 3 episodes back now, it's all a blur, when I talked about the Costco mac and cheese tub?
Yes.
27 pounds of mac and cheese.
My stomach just went.
And it was actually like marketed to food service, even though we felt it should go in your bomb shelter.
Yep.
How much do you love when you're at a buffet and they come out with the pre-labeled, pre-made, and you just know they're just dumping pre-made into.
And they're shaking the bucket right into the thing. So that's part of the.
At least pretend it's homemade for me. Give
Or
me the allure,
big
the illusion.
Costco jug of the sweet and sour sauce, like before you dumping it into the little self-service bowl. Yes, I like to, again, you eat with your eyes. If you wanted to pay so much per person or whatever to go and have that super cheap bulk stuff that's mostly chemicals or whatever else, that's fine, but we don't need to see it.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. There's another, I want to do an episode at some point about open kitchens. And that's another thing I have a love and hate. I know there's this new trend now where people want to see their food being prepped.
Mostly because of the horror stories we've heard about kitchens.
I've also taken some photos in the last little while where I've been to places that have open kitchens, and they are the what not to do's when you're having open kitchens. You need restaurants. You got to train your staff. People are watching you, especially when you have those show kitchens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyways, it's one of those things that it's again, sometimes it's done really right, sometimes it's not done properly at all. It can actually turn people off from going back.
But again, buffet service etiquette, fill the container outside of the public eye and just come and swap it. I mean, that eliminates a lot of that.
Yeah. So I mean, even catering, I remember there was sometimes I'd have, like a sauce or a condiment in a big jar that I would have in the back on ice, and then one of my staff, maybe not so trained, would just say, hey, they're out of this, I'm going to go and bring no, you're going to bring the bowl back.
Get it and bring it back.
We're going to refill it, and then you bring it back. You never ever fill anything at the table. That was just a whole, the fact that we would have to say that's kind of freaking me out.
I know, but we do.
I know. So another thing is a kind of a little turn off to me, and it's because a lot of the restaurants do it, has to do with the fact of, sometimes that you finish your first plate and you've gone to get your second one, you come back and it's still sitting there.
It hasn't been cleared.
It is not because they're short-staffed. Sometimes they do that on purpose, either to disgust you or to remind
make you stop eating,
or to remind you how much you already ate.
Oh, no.
Right?
Clear the damn
and
plates.
I understand it. So there's always some people that are kind of pushing the plates for you to take it, right? So just keep that in mind. They're not necessarily the short staff. If you want your plate removed, just wait until someone comes back and asks. Do not go and take the dirty plates, silverware, anything else, and decide to go stick it wherever you want. Because that doesn't help
Just
anybody.
ask someone to clear it.
Yes. I have spent many nights over the years finding like dirty glasses in plant pots, right? For people just wander by because they have it in their hand and drop it off.
Yeah, don't clear your own dishes. If you're concerned with the service, flag someone down.
Yeah, do not clear your own plates.
So speaking to the leaving the dishes on the table to give people the hint, I got a little bit of my what the actual fuck for this week.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's going to make me cough. I laugh so loud.
Let me pull this up because this is amazing. So this speaks a little bit to my story about my friend who they pulled the Jello. So they didn't tell him to leave, but they made him feel kind of bad about all the Jello he was eating. So, and it's about the idea of the hidden limits of the all-you-can-eat buffet. There are places now that actually have fine print, either on the menu when you're ordering or on the door or whatever, that states that certain dishes are not on the all-you-can-eat. For example, you go to sushi places, and some sushi places that offer all-you-can-eat, certain items are not all-you-can-eat. You do have to pay for those separately.
Yep.
So it's basically one of those buyer beware. And I think it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of another, because you get those people, like the guests that you're talking about, who basically stayed over breakfast and lunch, or, you know, my friends who I love very, very much, but, you know, they go for crab night and they like eat all of the crab in sight, and, you know, good for them. But that, you know, so restaurants are taking back control by putting these hidden limits in. It might be that you can only take 1 plate of the proteins, or that if you're ordering a certain a certain item, it's going to be a la carte as opposed to, or you get 1 serving a la carte and they'll bring it to your plate versus actually serving it on the display.
Or
on the
they
buffet.
have somebody serving it for you.
Yeah.
At the buffet.
And then they guilt you. You feel guilty going up, and then you feel guilty going up more than once. But there's actually been situations where people have been thrown out, and you've eaten enough, and they go, but it says all you can eat, and people are suing over things like that. So I think the reality is that when you're going to go for a buffet, just it's that buyer beware. There are some buffet places now that are charging you if you have too much leftovers, too much waste.
Yeah, I think there was one here in Sudbury someplace that was doing the same thing. It was another Asian
The sushi places
buffet.
do.
So one of the sushi places was basically saying that if you end up ordering 15 things and you leave 3 of them, they had a certain fee schedule that they were going to charge you for all the food that you wasted. So good for them.
Yeah, I think that's kind of fair. Like I said, it's that double-edged. It's like, well, it says all you can eat, but I mean, do you need to be a pig? You know, I think there's some balances. But I thought, like really, like all you can eat. Now there's like disclaimers on all you can eat because people can't control themselves when they go to buffets.
I cannot.
I work at Lottie King's Steakhouse Bar in Sudbury. My dining too is if you ask me to pack up your food for you, please bring it home and not leave it on the table. It's just wasted food.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to go into a little bit of the etiquette stuff. So there's some general manners and rules aside from this regular dining one, and we did an entire episode on it. I will put a link in the show notes too, in case you need to brush up on just the general how-tos.
My favorite part of our dining etiquette episode is a friend of mine in the wedding industry had watched it, and the next wedding we were at, we had talked about how to eat soup. And they had soup. He's like, Cynthia, I can't eat the soup in front of you. He says, after watching that etiquette thing, I went, watch this, and I picked it up and I drank it.
Oh no!
I'm like, just drink your soup or eat your soup. Don't stress about me.
Yeah. Yes, it's spooning away from.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole other thing. So a couple notes. There are people who will pick something up to take a closer look at it and put it back on the buffet. Again, you touch it, it's yours.
You touch it, it's yours. You break it, you buy it. You touch it, it's yours.
So don't rip off pieces, any kind of handling. And one of the most disgusting parts is, they said there's a 2013 study from Michigan State University. Only 5% of people wash their hands in the specified health unit manner, meaning for how long, with soap, all that, hot water, all that kind of thing.
But as my Auntie Joanne would say, you eat a peck of dirt before you die.
It's not the dirt that I'm really concerned with. I have to say, this is also a travel show as well. When you start going to other countries, it's just travelers in general at airports. I'll go into the ladies' room in the airport, and there's either half the people who are leaving the stalls ahead of me go right by me and don't even wash at all. Other ones will actually go through the whole process of the big show of just wetting their hands, right? And then putting it in the dryer like that fixed everything, and then they leave. It's disgusting.
You know what I do when I travel? Because it's not too bad. A lot more airports have the open, so you don't have to open a door to leave the washroom.
Yes.
But in some of the older places where you still have a door, I'm just gonna walk out and I've got sanitizer and wipes in my carry-on, and I'm gonna use that because I have this thing of where I wash my hands and then I go touch the door and open the door.
That's why I use paper towels or
negated
something to
it.
open the
Yeah.
door. So that's.
But now they all have those freaking air dryers.
I hate those air dryers. Anyways, even
anyways.
healthy eaters prefer paper towels. So I have to do a whole bathroom show.
Oh,
Like gas station bathrooms.
I have some great bathroom pictures.
Because I figured that all the bathrooms you have to encounter, public bathrooms and travel, it's like, oh my God. Another thing has to do with, and I always tease her about this, if there's a mixed dish, like there's a shrimp, like a jambalaya that has shrimp and sausage and everything else, you do not pick out all of the good things out of it.
But I only want the good things, and I'm only really paying triple what I'm actually going to eat.
So, because what happens is you have to
I agree.
be, the whole idea of etiquette is to being courteous to the people who you are dining with or you are serving. So the people coming behind you, they're going to end up in that jambalaya with a bunch of seasoned rice, right? And maybe some peppers, and that's about it.
So, and I'm also going to fault the restaurants to a certain extent, because a lot of them will serve their dishes with like the rice and then the vegetables and then the protein on top.
Correct.
You're asking for that. Mix it up.
Yes, and that's a good tip because the other thing is they're trying to do that to make it look like there's more protein in it than there
Yeah.
actually is, and I understand that. But the way to get around that, as I mentioned before, shallow pans.
Yeah.
So if you have to swap them out more often, do that as opposed to having the bigger pan out there. You don't have to swap it as often because that's when you end up with just a bunch of rice.
Isn't it the best when you go to get like a piece of lasagna and there's no cheese because someone's taken the entire top layer of cheese? Or I don't
Pick
actually
the
do that.
pepperoni off pizza. I've seen people.
I
Kids.
have seen that.
Yeah,
oh,
picking-
kids, yeah.
They take the pepperoni and the bacon off the top of the pizza and they leave the crust there. It's the most disgusting thing. Okay,
right.
so we already talked about eating right out of the pan or platter. So
Yeah.
if dessert, like don't put things on a plate and take it back to your table. You don't stand there. It is not that kind of a buffet. Piling the plate so high that it's a hazard to everyone around you. I watched people trying to weeble wobble their way back to their seats. You know what? It's a buffet. It's an all-you-can-eat
go back
buffet.
and get
You
more.
can go back for more. And the good thing is that you might go back and you might get fresher stuff when you go back. So take that chance. But I've seen people like spilling things on people beside them, spilling things at their table. You're losing half the food anyways, but you were so worried about getting that last rib.
Think about whether or not your kids are dexterous enough to be able to carry their own plate back in that same fashion. But there's something else too that I don't think we mentioned yet that deals with like cross-contamination and germs and etiquette, and that's like using the proper serving utensil for the proper dish.
Oh.
Don't take the one for the potatoes and use it the meat and vice versa. Like they're there for a reason. If you're missing a utensil, just ask one of the staff.
Correct. So if you, and usually the reason it's missing is because somebody ahead of you did it wrong. So usually if there's no spoon beside that mashed potatoes or in that mashed potatoes, it is because someone took that spoon to go and serve themselves something else down the buffet.
And
so
if
you'll
you-
find that spoon elsewhere.
And if you
unfortunately.
drop it, don't just place it on the side. Pick
Ask
it up and give
somebody
it
to
to
come and get
someone
it.
so that you can be sure that it doesn't get put back in. It's all about germs. A lot of this is about germs, eh? Germs.
You know, the other thing is, and it's something people don't rarely think about, just like the servers don't necessarily come and clear those dirty plates quick enough for you, don't get impatient and take that same plate back. Because I'm going to verbalize this here. So you have your dirty plate that still has your ribs and chicken bones and,
And you
everything else
use
on
your
it.
fork, put it in your mouth, and put it back into the thing.
That's correct. So, I mean, things go out, things go back in, and they're sitting on your plate. Then you're going up to the buffet and you're taking one of the serving spoons and serving something with sauce or whatever onto your plate, like mashed potatoes, and you're hitting you're touching your plate to get it off or to scrape it onto your plate, and then you're putting that back into the. Anyways, use clean plates and use clean silverware. That's what they're there for. You keep asking for it. You keep getting new stuff every single time. You do not have to keep, and don't take up your silverware with you.
Yeah,
when you're
leave it back
going.
at your table.
Yeah, so don't grab, if you're close to the buffet, don't grab the fork or spoon off of your table to go over and serve yourself stuff off the buffet. Again, use the ones that are there only, not yours. Because the fact that I even have to mention that's kind of freaky. And then the last one has to do with, again, the portion sizes. The whole idea of buffets encourages overeating, and that's my thing. I find that, yes, you're usually, because it's filling people up on things that are high sugar, high starch, right? Store-bought cakes.
Over-processed.
Yeah, everything's like out of boxes and mayonnaise and jars, and it's there to fill you up.
Yeah.
So as much as you think that you're getting a lot of money and you're saving money on it, you're not saving your health at all. You know, because at buffets, you can't split things. right? So if you can't even finish a plate full of something, of a standard platter at a restaurant, you can't take home leftovers.
Yeah.
You can't split it with somebody else. So is it really a value for you? So that's one of the things you have to kind of decide. It's great if you're going with a big group and there's a bunch of you doing a lot of things, but if you are just going like with you and your husband or something to go for dinner, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, Norm and I are actually splitting a lot of things down we're going. So we will each have a starter salad to start, but we'll share an entree because some of them, like this, is so big.
I wish. Again, having a husband with a healthy appetite, that is not an option for us. So from the flip side, when you are going to buffets, it's just the awareness around what dishes you're choosing. For example, we're seeing more buffets have like display cooking happening where they're prepping. So for example, at a breakfast buffet, whenever we're at a hotel, they often have either an omelet or a waffle station.
I always go there.
We will go there because you know it's fresh made, you know what's going into it, you know it hasn't been sitting. Even at a lot of buffets that feature, say, a Eggs Benedict, you can actually request a fresh one be made for you instead of taking the one that's right off the buffet, and we've done that more than once. So don't be afraid to have this awareness and kind of come loaded with this awareness the next time you go to a buffet, because I don't want to stand here and say don't go and eat at buffets, because first of all, I'm going to have a bunch of buffet restaurants going, you jerks on Flying for Flavor, how would you do that? It's not about that. And I think that a buffet has a time and a place, and I think that, for example, when we talk a lot on the show about dance competitions, because we do a lot of travel for dance, and we've got the kids, and we have to go and eat in between meal times. We don't have a lot of time. It's a perfect time for us to slam into a buffet, grab a little bit of each, whatever we need, and then go off, and the kids are ready to compete their next number. But it's that awareness around what are you choosing, not taking too much food, and take a look at the food. If it's got like a layer of crusty on it, maybe that's not the one you want to eat.
No. And speaking of taking a look at it, one of the other key things, especially not just for your health, but also you don't have as much food waste, is take a walk around the buffet first. See what everything is. Look and see and make a plan for yourself. Like, oh, there's going to be like prime rib down at the end. I really want prime rib. So now I'm going to kind of cut back on certain things. Yeah, so I'm not start waiting until we get there. So so keep that in mind for one of the things. There's nothing wrong, and every place will actually let you go and take a peek before they actually serve you. So it's a good way to go and get started on it. You can go through and read all the descriptions of things. You can peek in between people. Don't cut in line though, because then you don't want to be one of those people. And then just make sure that things are displayed in a way that's going to be healthy. So skip the sushi that's not on ice or hasn't been made fresh. Skip other things. Say like there's cheese and things, especially when you're at hot destinations at resorts.
We've talked about that.
We talked about this about having the whole idea of when there's cheese and it looks like there's like mist and stuff on it.
So if your cheese is sweaty, you don't want to eat it.
Sweaty cheese. That's disgusting. And that's, again, it's one of the things that I tailor and I don't choose those things. Or it's because it's so hot, they may have had the yogurt sitting in ice to start off with, but now it's just water.
Just water.
So just keep in mind when you're looking at all those things, and is the hot food hot? So not, if something's just warm, take special note. Because different countries, and maybe different states or different provinces, depending where you listen to this, they all have maybe slightly different rules, but essentially when it comes to those chafing dishes, which are those hot holding units, I know here in Ontario and Canada, the big rule is that it needs to be heated first up to the proper temperature, then put in those. They are holding units, they are not cooking units. So if anything is feeling warm, they're either one of the burners is out, or they didn't warm it up to temperature before they put it in, thinking that they can just let it sit there and then eventually that rice will get up to pass. And as much as it sounds awful, rice is one of the worst offenders.
Oh, really?
Surprisingly, yes. And that's one of the things that you learn when you take food handlers programs, is that rice is one of the first things that, because of the starch content and natural sugars and everything else. Anyways, rice is a no-go. So cold rice, unless it's actually cold, so lukewarm rice is never good. So just keep that in mind. But actually, those things should only be up there for about 2 hours. Right? So,
and I would say max.
Exactly. So if you think you're going to go and set up this long leisurely buffet for your guests for 4 to 5 hours, as long as it's not a public thing where you're charging them and the health unit gets involved, but just keep that in mind, that's where things start to get, bacteria starts to grow. It's not the same temperature anymore. Again, those little heating or fuel units that are underneath that are holding it are probably going out by then. So it's just you're asking for trouble the longer that it sits there.
As a home entertainer, when I put out a buffet, it's an hour tops, and I'm packing it up. And I know that we have extra time, but I would rather pack it up and away and don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, then you can do some other things, which are always fun. So I want to talk a little bit about, I think that's basically it. I want to talk about setting up a buffet. So I have a couple of tips if you're going to set up one for yourself so that it's always successful. Number one is make it pretty. So take the time and kind of plan things out. I used to do little things like if I was going to set it up in my house, I would take out all the serving dishes that I was going to use and I would put sticky notes in them. So like this is going to be this is going to be this, and then I can see spatially how everything is going to line up on the table or tables if I have enough room. Also keep in mind that you're going to have plates, silverware. If there's any other sauces or condiments that are going to be on the table, you really need to kind of map out where everything's going to be. One of the things that I always find interesting though is that a lot of people just naturally put all the plates, the silverware, the napkins, the everything, all of those little extra things all at the front of the buffet. So if you have ever gone to a place that only puts the plates and then you pick up your silverware and stuff on your way back, because you don't need your fork, your knife in your little napkin roll at the beginning of it. That's just one extra thing that you have to hang on to.
I even go a step further and have the napkin or forks, napkins, utensils kind of things at the table where people are going to be eating instead of on the buffet, because you get to the end and they go, oh crap, I got to grab my utensils. And if they've already got like a plate with bread and whatever else, or they get back and they sit down and they went, oh, I didn't grab utensils because it was at the end. So even having it where they're going to, at the destination,
but if you have people like sometimes we have in our house where basically to eat where you sit. So for those kind of situations, but never just put them at the front because then people feel obligated they have to grab it then, and then it gets kind of awkward. Having things at different heights is not just a visual appeal, but also if you have things in behind on the width of the table, it's great to have maybe things that are more difficult to serve or sloppy closest to you, and then things that are easier like pieces of chicken and things like that can go in behind, but just elevate it maybe 6 inches, something like that. You can use, I've used empty boxes.
We use shoe boxes, we use the little boxes you get from the dollar store, like those gift boxes, are nice and sturdy. And you want to do that as well because if you're going across this way, you've got sleeves, but if you're going up, there's less chance of sleeves going into the stuff that's in front.
Don't hesitate. Besides the fact that it makes it more visually appealing, having all these different layers, it actually makes it much easier for people to be serving themselves. So I really love the idea of different heights.
Take a look at Pinterest. Pinterest buffets. You'll get tons of ideas.
She's so trying to get me into Pinterest.
Oh, you don't have to.
I know I have the accounts. No, I like it because a lot of people do it. I just don't have time to do it. I really wish I did. So then the other thing is that just little housekeeping things, especially if you are the hostess and you busted your butt all day and you're setting up this buffet, keep in mind that, if you probably just sit down and put up your feet for 2 minutes, if you want everyone else to sort of finish off their meal service on their own, meaning if you have disposable things, have a garbage nearby so that you don't have to walk around and start collecting garbage. If you are dirty plates and dishes, there's always somebody who finishes first. Usually as a hostess, you tend to eat last. There's always somebody when I'm starting to eat that's looking at me going, so where do I put my plate? So have a designated area, have some kind of a bin, have something, big platters.
Doesn't cost that much to buy a bus bin.
No, and
at
then
the local restaurant supply store.
And then even like a big Rubbermaid container or something like that. Shout out to Rubbermaid, and then put that over on the side, and then put one dirty plate or a dirt plate and something in there that indicates to people. For the same thing when I used to tell staff when they were serving things on skewers or anything disposable on a serving tray, like for appetizers, always have a dish or a plate with one of the empty skewers on it, which will actually indicate to the people that's where you put the used ones. So it just gives visual cues to people so that you don't have to spend your time, and then again, you don't find napkins and things in your plants.
It's also helpful to have a dog so that when your guests are walking from the buffet to their seat, inevitably drop half their food. Then the dog cleans it up.
I'm sure sometimes the dog's actually probably tripping people, so there's stuff.
She might.
Okay, so as we were saying, if you're watching this and it happens to be Flavor Fest weekend, as in March 1st to 3rd, make sure you're watching our Facebook page. So all 3 of us are going to be at different locations throughout the weekend. We're all going to be posting like live videos, behind the scenes things, photos of stuff happening, and funny little, we have oyster sharking competitions, so we might do some video clips of that. We're going to be giving away prizes wherever we are. We haven't quite decided yet. I thought it'd be kind of fun if we each did our own little update before the weekend of what schedule, like, hey, I'm going to be here, 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 here.
If you're in the VIP group, you'll have access to that.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, just to find out where we are, because we are giving away prizes. And that's a good, is that your segue into the VIP thing?
It could
it's
be.
March, people.
We have a new password.
Yes. So before that, we have a February contest winner. And if you remember the prize for February.
I just saw who the winner is.
that I just did before Cynthia got here. And actually, it didn't have to be a draw this time because I just had to check because we had a 1+1 contest, meaning that if you convince somebody else to join our VIP lounge and they used your name, basically as like a referral, and you got your name into the draw for my little goodies that I brought back from Quebec. So congratulations, Nicole Anderson.
I'm texting her right now.
To tell her that she would.
And she's one of our original listeners from the very beginning.
In the very beginning. See, it pays to listen or to watch. So for the month of March, because we are so sick of snow, your entry code for this month is spring, because we're trying we're hopeful because I'm tired of walking around gripping onto things because I am sliding on ice everywhere. I'm tired of it.
I have fallen, I think I fell 3 times in 2 weeks, and I was ready to not leave the house again.
Exactly. So
Spring.
I figure if we just have some positive affirmations and keep saying spring and typing it in and seeing the word, maybe it'll come faster. So again, it's the Flying for Flavor VIP Lounge that you can find on Facebook. That's where we have contests. If I'm doing video demos and stuff from my own home kitchen, I'm posting them there. We said we have a contest every month depending on where it is. I'm trying to think, maybe I should bring something back from Rio de Janeiro.
When are you back?
End of the month?
That would work. I was thinking Flavor Fest package, but no, I think that works too.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll have some giveaways at Flavor Fest too. But anyways, you got to be in the VIP lounge, so we'll update you.
So what is it, FFF VIP?
VIP, that's how if you look up the FFF VIP, we'll just sort of pop up. And then as soon as you try to join it, it'll automatically ask you for the entry code. And now that you've been listening or watching, you know it anyway, so it's an easy one. And I think that's about it for today.
No, so in the meantime, rate us on your podcast player, subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast player, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. And if I'm pointing down, you can see there's a little thumbs up sign. Feel free to give us a thumbs up. If you like it, thumbs down, then don't do that, just do thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe as well too.
And if you learned any kind of fun tips on any of these episodes, make sure you share it with friends who also want to learn all these things, because again, we're always going to be sharing all of our knowledge and things that we've learned over the years and things we're learning now all about food, drinks, and travel. So we're going to go back and eat now because
there's still a lot of food to go.
It's a Greek restaurant, a lot of food. So cheers.
Cheers. Opa.
Opa. Thanks so much for watching this video. We love putting it together. It's so much fun. All of our favorite things, good food, good drinks, a lot of travel talk, and we put it all together in one fun show. So make sure you follow us here, click on the videos below, follow, subscribe, and find us on your favorite podcast player. We'll see you on our next trip.